Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. I'm very excited about this episode. Here with me today, I have Crystal Denmon from LA. Crystal, welcome to the show and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
Definitely. So, first, I would just love to hear more about what your childhood was like and what you saw, or maybe what you didn't see, that shaped your view of building wealth.
So I grew up here in LA, South LA, Mid City area. I had a very middle class upbringing. Like I didn't have to hurt for anything. I wasn't spoon fed anything. So I had a very middle class upbringing. And so far as like being exposed to different like wealth and real estate things, my family did own their home, so like that was sort of like the extent of real estate that I was exposed to, but I was never really exposed to like anything about like um flipping or something like that. So that was just something that you just sort of kind of like, see throughout the neighborhood, like, hey, that house across the street was kind of messed up and now it looks kind of nice. Like, what is that?
Yeah, definitely.
And then you hear the like little, I think my first introduction to real estate, everybody always says Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, but for
Mhm.
me it was the Carlton Sheets like infomercials back in the day. I'm like, how he's doing this with no money, no credit? Like back then I didn't know what he was talking about, but now I'm like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that I wasn't really exposed to about like flipping and house hacking and things like that. So
Definitely. So how did you find yourself getting into real estate? I know we spoke a little off camera, but like so since you didn't really come from a background of it, you saw a couple of infomercials, like what sparked your interest? Like what got you into real estate?
I think what got me into real estate was always going to be, I don't even say plan B, but a supplement to plan A. So plan A was to become a pediatrician, right? So I did the whole undergrad at UCLA, grad school thing, and then I was planning on going to medical school. And my thinking was, well, if I'm going to be this like doctor balling with all this money, like I'm going to need to invest it, right? And I'm like, well, I'll invest it in real estate. So I was attending meetings, like trying to educate myself so that when the time came, when I was like this doctor who was balling with all this money, right, I would know how to invest it. So fast forward, obviously I'm not a doctor. So I didn't do the whole medical school route. So I ended up finishing grad school, and then I ended up working for a company who did they purchased non-performing second liens and got them reperforming, and then I also had my own tutoring company on the side. So one day I was at work for that company, and then they just told me like Friday afternoon, hey, we don't need you to come back Mondays. So yeah, I had no warning, no like no 2 week notice, none of that. It was literally like Friday at like 2 or 3 o'clock. They called me in the conference room and was like, "Hey, we need to talk to you," and they let me go. And so
Wow.
at that time, I still had my tutoring business that was going on, but that was sort of slowing down. And I was like, look, I need to figure something out that could be a little bit more stable. I've always been going to these, RIA meetings at these different hotels and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Why not just try and give real estate, 100% effort and see what happens? Like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm fired, I'm broke. Like, what's the worst that can happen? So, I just, you know, bust through the real estate door and, haven't looked back since.
Definitely. So there's one thing you mentioned that I want to dive into a little more. You mentioned that early on, and I had a lot of the same thoughts. Just I guess probably how it's portrayed in media or just our perception of what it means to invest. You mentioned that you knew at a particular point in time you felt real estate would be a supplement to Plan A. So you mentioned you'd be this rich doctor, then you would have to invest that money in real estate.
Right, right.
And I think it's very interesting. And a lot of us have this same thought because we're not taught about a lot of the ways you can get into real estate at a low cost until much later down the line. And I think it keeps a lot of people out just having that perception that I need a, like, for example, we're in LA, right?
Right.
So somebody might think I need to have 20% down to buy this property, but they may not know about FHA or NACA, all these things, you know? So I just wanted to make sure we didn't pass over that because I think it reigns true for a lot of us in our experience.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. Like, I feel like it's kind of like typical, you know, when you're growing up, you're exposed to certain careers like teacher, lawyer, doctor, engineer, right? It's kind of same thing with real estate. You're exposed to like flipping or landlord, and it's like in your mind they both require, some money for down payment and stuff like that, and we aren't really exposed to all the different avenues that you could get started in real estate. You could do wholesaling, you could be, do house hacking and, purchase a house with FHA, 3.5% down, NACA, stuff like that. So I mean, like, our options aren't really taught to us, and I think it's unfortunate that sometimes we think of real estate as plan B or a supplement to plan B when it can actually end up being, plan A if that's what you want to do. So, and a lot of times people think, if I want to get into real estate, they automatically think real estate agent. And,
Mhm.
that's not necessarily true as well. So, I mean, I think it's just a matter of educating people on the different strategies and different options that they can pursue in order to get into real estate.
100%, 100%. Something else I wanted to talk about. So you mentioned you went to the job and after Friday we're not going to need you no more anymore.
Yep.
And the majority of us knows that feeling to some degree. And so talk me through what was going through your mind at that time. Your back was against the wall. You're not going to have a job after a certain day. What was going through your mind? And why was it that particular event that was like, all right, I'm gonna make this real estate thing happen?
I think what was going through my mind was kind of like a range of emotions. Like, when I first heard the news, like I was trying to hold back tears. Like I was trying to be a G about it, but I was holding back tears because I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Like, why didn't I at least deserve like, sufficient notice and stuff so I could get things in order? And then I just felt like I wasn't good enough. Um, that was like some other feelings that I had. Like I just wasn't good enough. Like maybe I'm not meant to. I don't know. It was just a range of like a lot of self doubt that really crept in, and I would say that I experienced that for at least a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, until I was finally like, you know what, like I think when you're at the bottom that, there's only you can only go up. So it's
Yeah.
like when you're at the bottom, it's like you have no fear. And I think the fact that I had nothing to comfort me, I didn't have that job to comfort me is what helped me to let go of the fear of actually pursuing real estate. And I think sometimes a lot of people who, are comfortable in their jobs, sometimes they have that fear of pursuing something different because they're comfortable. So I think the fact that I was in such an uncomfortable, unfamiliar situation, I was like, you know what? What is like literally the worst that could happen? Like,
Yeah. 100%. And I like that. I like that. I like the fact that sometimes things will happen in life, and it'll force you to do that thing that you may have been hesitant about, or you know what I mean, or that you may have been scared about. So awesome, awesome. So we got the
right,
backstory.
right.
We got how you felt through everything. So take us to your beginnings. And how many years ago was this? Where this
So
all went down?
I started real estate full time back in it was like 2013, 2014.
Okay, got you, got you. So walk us through the beginning. Like, what did you do? Like, what kind of investing or real estate strategies? Like, what was that? What was that like in the beginning?
Okay, so like in the beginning, I was fired, I was broke, so I didn't have money. So I had to start off with a strategy that, played to my strength of time, but not necessarily having a lot of money. So that's why, instead of trying to go directly into fix and flipping or trying to buy a house or something like that, I chose to start off doing real estate wholesaling. So I started off real estate wholesaling, and I didn't pull a list because, again, that's some money that I didn't have to spend. So I would literally go in my car and do something that we call driving for dollars, basically going up and down the street, writing down the addresses of all the ugly houses that I would see. And I would come back and I would mail them a letter. And that's how I started my real estate career, was real estate wholesaling, driving for dollars and sending out mail pieces to owners of those properties.
Definitely. And how did you? So I guess for your listeners who perhaps they're not familiar with wholesaling, can you define what it is, please?
Wholesaling, I like to call it like a real estate matchmaker. So
Yeah.
basically, you are matching a motivated seller, somebody who is experiencing some sort of financial distress, or maybe some sort of circumstantial distress, like maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe that's an older person who needs to downsize, and they, are wanting to sell their property, and they're not wanting to use the services of a real estate agent for whatever reason. Maybe they just want a smoother transaction. Maybe they don't want people in and out their house, whatever reason it may be. It's your job to find those people and then run the numbers, get the property under contract, and then um, sell that contract or to a cash buyer. So a flipper like myself who would buy the property and then fix it up and sell it for for a profit. So you're kind of like the middleman. You're the what I call the real estate matchmaker. You're matching the motivated seller who needs to sell with a cash buyer who needs to find a property to fix and flip so that they could keep their, flipping company running, and then you get paid for being, the in between person.
Got you. Got you. Got you. And how did you, in the beginning, how did you figure out like what areas you wanted to drive? Or did you just like get in the car? It was like, all right, I'm gonna just start near me, or like how did you figure out early on, just being so new, where to even drive?
I mean, I just felt, wholesaling is one of those strategies that, like, if you find a property undervalued, like, it's going to sell at a price. So, like, I personally started driving in my neighborhood because I felt that's what I felt comfortable with. Like, that's where I knew that, you cross this street, it's a different neighborhood. You cross over there, it's a different school district. So it was just, what I felt comfortable with. And that's how, I mean, I didn't do any type of, okay, let me see where the cash buyer activity was or anything like that, because that wasn't my mind frame back then. I was really working off of like little bits and pieces trying to put this thing together. So I literally was just like, all right, let me go on Google Maps and draw a nice little rectangle, and that's what I'm going to drive today. And then tomorrow I'm going to drive the other piece.
Definitely. What I like about that is you just got started, right? So many people, they want to have this beautiful plan, this beautiful PowerPoint presentation, all the equipment they need, all the resources they need, and a lot of those people never take a step. A lot of those people never actually start anything because they're looking for things to be perfect. Whereas, you're like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Let me start. I have a car. Let me start and just drive in the neighborhood I know. So I think it's great
Yeah,
that you just started.
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times people hide behind perfectionism, and I mean, my even today myself, sometimes I struggle with that, and it's like sometimes people are so how should I say it? They want to feel busy and they want to feel like they're actually doing something, so they do all these non-revenue generating activities. Oh, let me decide what my business name is. Oh, let me decide my logo. Oh, let me figure out what my business cards are going to look like. Oh, well, I need my website. Well, oh, I need to talk to a tax consultant to figure out how I'm going to be taxed. I'm like, dude, you haven't even made any money. Like, why are you thinking 20 steps down the road when you haven't even done step one? Stop trying to hide behind those activities that are not going to lead you to getting a deal. Like, stop it. Like, you have to actually do the work that is going to lead you to actually closing a deal. Like, I know we like to hide and we feel comfortable like we're actually doing something, but you're not. So I didn't wait till I had my LLC. I didn't wait till I had a business card. I didn't have any of that. I literally just got in my car and started driving.
That's it. That's it. That's it. So So talk to us about the first deal that you got under contract. I guess how long did it take from you know, finding some properties, getting in contact with some owners, getting buyers, and all that whole thing?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say from the time I started driving for dollars, and like I said, I was mailing letters. It took me about 4 months before someone called me and actually wanted to sell their house. Like I was definitely getting phone calls back that weren't all that pleasant. I'll
Yeah,
just leave it there. But it took me about 4 months to actually get someone who was motivated. And then I would say about another 4 months of us just sort of going back and forth and getting to know each other, building that rapport before we actually closed. So I would say from the time I just like started to the actual time of closing the deal, it took about 8 months.
got you, got you. And how did you find buyers? Like, how did you even figure out like people who would have money to be able to buy the properties you were finding?
Oh, so I was like continually like networking at different RIA meetings and stuff like that. So I was talking to different cash buyers. So that was my way of finding cash buyers.
Got you, got you. That's amazing. And I want people to really think about everything you just said, in particular your first. So it took you 8 months to close your first deal, but that whole time, you're still working to find deals. You're still working your network. Keeping people warm until you finally got to that first deal. Now imagine if halfway through you're like, you know what, I'm gonna just quit. I'm gonna just find something else to do. This is not for me.
Right, right, right. I mean, to me, it was like I had to keep myself motivated. Like people will call back and like, curse you out and stuff like that. And I just sort of took it as a game, like, oh, 10 curse words. The person before you said 20. Like, haha. Like I knew, like, you just keep going. I mean, it's like dating. You're not gonna meet your soulmate on the first, swipe right or left or whatever you do nowadays. Right? Like you have to keep going. You have to keep going. So I mean, I knew that there was someone out there. It's like I knew other people had done it, and I knew there was no reason if I really 100% put in the like fully committed and put in the effort, and not just some like half-ass effort that like there's no reason why it wouldn't work for me. So I just knew I just needed to keep going, and like it would just sort of like build on each other. You get people who would curse you out. You get people who are nice. You would get people who would be like, well, no, not yet. But then I finally got someone who was like, yes, I'm ready now. So, and it just sort of like builds on top of each other. So,
Sure. So how did it feel closing that first deal?
it felt great. Like, it felt like I had proof of concept. Like, I had proof that, you know, me, young black woman in LA, I am able to do a deal in my hometown. I didn't have to, go out of state. Not saying that anything is wrong with that. But for me, I had a conversation with myself and I was like, what do you feel comfortable doing? Like, yeah, there may be people like killing it out of state and getting bomb cash flow and virtually wholesaling or whatnot, but I never felt comfortable doing that. I don't know if I have trust issues or what, but I like to see
Yeah.
where the money is or what the deals and stuff like that. So I was just like, it gave me proof of concept and it just gave me confidence that like I could, have a talk with myself, decide what real estate strategy I feel comfortable with, and if I actually implement it, that I could actually do a deal. So I mean, it just gave me a lot of confidence to continue to doing what I was doing.
Love it. I love
And the
it.
money was good because I was broke.
That's always a good part. You can't forget about that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So that was like my first off market deal. But even prior to doing my first off market deal, I was submitting offers on the MLS. And at that time, when I first got started, it was a lot of short sales that were going on. So, I was like, okay, I don't have a lot of money. Like, I couldn't do a whole lot of marketing myself. So I was like, okay, let me utilize the MLS. So I would literally go on the MLS and sort backwards. So all the houses that were on the MLS for like more than 90 days, I would call them like, hey, can I put in an offer? Can I put in an offer? And I remember my first one, the lady was like, well, it's a short sale. We're waiting for bank approval. I already have a buyer. He's good. He's legit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. But I kept following up with her. I would say about like every 6 weeks. And she's like, I remember one day she was like, oh, I have a buyer. Like, he's good. And literally, like, the next day, she was like, the buyer canceled. Do you want it? Do you want the deal? And I'm like, of course I do. Like, I had to like hold back the, well, I thought your buyer was good, but you know. So that was like what I did like when I first got started to get a little bit of money. Then I kind of like transferred that into my off market marketing so that I could find off market deals. And then I just continue to find off market deals. So I would say like the majority of the deals that I do today, I still utilize those same principles of finding off market deals. Um, Today. So like that's the good thing I feel about like wholesaling is that it teaches you how to find off market deals. It teaches you how to negotiate with people. It teaches you how to be a people person. It teaches you how to find something that is below value, and you could do whatever strategy you want with it. You could wholesale it, you could flip it, you could burr it, you could house hack it, you could Airbnb it. I think it's really, the skill of wholesaling. Some people kind of like look down upon it or whatever, but I think the skill of finding if the off market property and being able to negotiate with someone, I think that's just a skill that every real estate investor should have.
100% agree. 100% agree. So where did things go from there? You got your first deal under your belt. So how did things progress from that point on?
From that point on, I just kept, saving my money. Even though I had, a little money, I was still pretending like I was broke. So I saved my money until I felt like I had enough money to do my own flip here in the LA area. And then I've been doing that ever since.
Got you, got you. So did you keep like wholesaling for a period of time and then flip that into starting to flip houses?
Yeah, so I was saving my wholesale earnings, and then I would save that until I felt like I had enough money to do a flip here in LA.
Got you, got you. How much longer, I guess, or I guess about how many wholesale deals do you think you did until you felt you're at a point where like, all right, now I could transition into flipping?
I don't know if it was a number. It was like I know I wanted to have at least like $80,000, somewhere
Got you,
around eighty
got you.
thousand dollars. So that was kind of like my goal to where I felt comfortable that I could, pay for the down payment for the hard money, um, service the loan by making those monthly payments and stuff like that. So that was the number that I felt comfortable with. And
Hmm.
obviously that wasn't, buying a house in Beverly Hills. It was buying a house in a very, middle class area. So that's what I felt comfortable with.
Got you, got you. So talk to us about your first flip.
My first flip, it was actually what was the situation with that one? That one, I believe the owner had passed away. Yeah, so the owner had passed away. The heirs didn't really want anything to do at the house. With the house, I would say the main heir. There's always like the one that's in
Mhm.
charge. She was out of state and was willing to work with me, so I purchased that property. I'm trying to remember the numbers on that one. I think I want to say I purchased it for like 280 ish,
Mhm.
something like that. I put about like 65 of work into it. It was a 3 bedroom, 2 bath. It had a extra like den on the back, so I made that a fourth bedroom. And then I sold it. I would say, I want to say that took me about like 5 months, and I sold it for about like slightly under 500.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty good. And did you utilize like hard money for that one?
Yeah, so I utilized hard money. And it was hard trying to find someone who was willing to take a chance on someone who had not done a flip before. So I think my hard money rate at that time was 16% in 1 point, which compared to today's rates of hard money is like today's rates of hard money is anywhere between like 8 and 10. So at that time, 16% was extremely, extremely crazy high. But to me, again, it was one of those things where it's like I went into it with the mindset of, look, if I made absolutely zero money, like I would still be okay with that, because there's people who invest in, like, 30, 40, $50,000 programs, and they don't actually do a deal. So to me, I was like, look, if I go into this and I don't make any money, even if I took a loss of like $3 or $5,000, which I don't think I would, because why would a hard money lender underwrite the deal? So I felt confident going forward, but I told myself, like, even if I took a little bit of loss, like the education that I would have gained would like be so far ahead of like had I not just, took the plunge, that I was okay with it. So I just went for it, and I was scared. I was nervous. I've never flipped a house before. I'm thinking like, oh my God, what if something happens? But at the end of the day, I was like, look, I may not know the answer. Somebody out there knows the answer, right? Like
Yeah.
everything is figure outable. You may
Hmm.
not know how to figure it out, but somebody out there knows how to figure it out and knows how, knows what the answer is. So that was just sort of the mentality that I had going into that project. you know, um, I ended up making a profit on it, so I didn't take a loss. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And how long ago was that? Your first flip?
Like 5 years ago.
Got you, got you, got you. So being like a new flipper, how did you manage the project? Like, how did you like find contractor? How did you like figure all that out? Just that being your first time, did you have somebody like helping you out, or did you just like kind of research what you could and took it from there?
Well, like I tried to, so the cash buyer that I had from one of my first wholesales I did, I would just sort of, talk to them and, see if they had any referrals, talk to other flippers, see if they had any referrals. And just even just talking to, like, hey, if I knew a towel guy, hey, Mr. Towel Guy, do you know a floor guy? Do a floor guy? Do you know a general contractor? Just always asking and stuff like that. So, I finally met a GC, properly vetted him and everything. So it ended up working out.
Definitely. Were there any hiccups during that first flip, or things that came up from it you can recall that you didn't maybe didn't account for or just didn't expect?
Um, I would say one of the things was I closed on the property. I forget what month it was, but when I closed on it, there was still some occupants inside who didn't leave until 3 months later. So I never dealt with that situation before. So I had to end up like, look, here's some money, just go. So I ended up doing that. Um, And even with that situation, like he kept telling me, I'm going to leave, I'm going to leave. And then like one day I was just like, look, like, what do you really need? Like, what do you really need? He's like, look, I've never been on my own. Like, I've always had my family to support me. Like, if you need me to leave, I need like a car, and I need like, some money for a down payment for rent or whatever. So I was like, okay, let's go car shopping and let's go get you, some down money payment for your rent. So I mean, in that I learned that, never take possession of a property unless it's delivered vacant. And number two, talking to people and seeing what they really want and what they really need, to just kind of like help them in the situation. Like once I did that, he was gone in like 3 weeks, and I'm like, well, dang, I could have did this like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I kind of learned from that situation. What else? I think one time, like just some other things of just like, construction stuff happens, right? Like one time they were changing a window or something, and the window completely broke. So that was something that I didn't budget for, but I had to pay for. So just making sure, moving forward, I have a line item in my budget for, those oh snaps, we didn't think about this, or moments like that you don't anticipate. So I would say, those were probably like my biggest lessons that I could remember, um, from that first flip. And then just at the end, just, making sure we got multiple offers on that property. So it's like just making sure you put out a quality product, people would like. So those are, I would say, is probably like my top three lessons that I got from that first flip.
Definitely, definitely. That's awesome. That's awesome. Got you. So you had first batch of wholesale deals, rolled it into flipping, and then I guess how have things like progressed over the last like 5 years? Have you continued to flip in the LA area? Talk to us about what you've been up to since then.
Yeah, so I mean, I stick to my LA. I'm an LA girl at heart, so that's where I do my flipping at. So, my first flip was really just sort of like cosmetic type of flip. And now over the years I've just sort of took steps in terms of the expanding the scope of works that I'm comfortable with. So for a scope of work is like the a detailed outline of all the tasks and repairs and stuff like that need to be done to the property. So just going from painting carpet and new cabinets to like, okay, let's change the plumbing and let's change the electrical. Okay, well, let's change the roof now and let's do a little bit of an addition. Okay, well, let's try something where it needs some foundation work or something like that. Oh, okay, well, let's, tear down this and do a new construction ADU. So over the years, I've gradually gotten comfortable doing a larger scope of works.
Got you. I like that you mentioned that. You know, I think it's good to dive right into stuff, right? There's value in that. But it seems like the way you've done it is very strategic. Like you just start with what you have, what you know. And then over time, you build your confidence. You do a little more, you do a little more, take on a little more risk, uh, you know, and probably to the point where you're just basically tearing something down and building it up again. So I think I think it's very good that's the approach you've taken.
Yeah, I mean, that's the approach that I felt comfortable with. Like, I probably passed over deals that, I could have made money on, but if I didn't feel comfortable, I didn't feel comfortable. I'm not going to let, anybody try to punk me into taking a deal that I don't feel comfortable with.
100%. 100%. And do you find that you do most of your work in certain areas or is it spread around? Like what has the trend been for you? If there
Um,
if there is a trend.
I would say I stay in like the LA, South LA, mid city. I don't know what cute little name they want to put on it nowadays. But like but for real, it's like you wake up,
Yeah.
it's like we're in blah 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 square. It's like what?
It's like a new neighborhood
Anyway,
every day now.
yeah, I'm like that's my granny's neighborhood. We don't call it that. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I just sort of stay in areas that I'm comfortable with. I call it kind of like LA proper. If you could write Los Angeles on the envelope and mail it, then that's kind of like where I stay. Just because those are the areas where, especially when you're in LA, you're in a competitive market. You have to make decisions like with speed. So I stick to certain areas because like you could, send me a property and I'll know like right off the top, like, oh, there was a comp here, here, and here, it'll probably sell for this much. I know about how much work it needs. Like, yes, I could, move forward, or here's my offer and stuff like that. So sticking to a certain area helps me to, know the comps. It helps me to know the different vendors and stuff like that. It helps me to know like other real estate players in the area, and it just allows me to be comfortable in moving forward with a little bit of speed in terms of any decisions that I need to make.
Got it. Got it. I think you kind of answered my next question, which I was going to ask. You know, those of us in LA, we know this market is on fire. It's on fire. I don't know how else to explain it. And so I was going to ask what you think keeps you competitive in this market, but I think you definitely answered that question. And just having your areas, like the back of your hand, so you can notice when opportunity arises, and you can kind of just within minutes at this point probably assess if it's something that's worth doing.
Right, exactly. And also, like I said, still, majority of my deals are off market. So I think just having those people skills that I learned from, wholesaling, dealing directly with sellers, trying to be empathetic to their situations, I think that sort of sometimes helps to put me a little bit over the edge, because sometimes it's not always about the number. I think sometimes as real estate people were all like, the numbers and la 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 la. And I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, but for some people, it's a certain situation that they want. Like some people, it could be a little thing that you put in your offer that could be insignificant to you, but be, the world of difference between your offer getting accepted and, it being declined. So I think just sort of having those people skills, being empathetic, listening more than you speak. You got two ears and one mouth for a reason. So use them in that same proportion. So I think just that, those skills have kind of helped me to, continue to be, maintain a slight competitive edge. I mean, there are some people who will pay, boohoo's more than I will, and I can't compete with that. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like, if someone has an offer, $50,000 more than mine, like, at the end of the day, it's only so much being empathetic could do. But yeah, I think that kind of helps me to have a slight competitive edge, especially when I'm going direct to seller.
For sure, for sure. What's your favorite flip deal that you've done? That I guess when I ask that, rather, what comes to mind?
Oh, the one that recently sold, like,
Tell us about it. Tell us about it.
no, I'm just saying, like, it's always the one you just finished because
Oh,
it's
got you, got you,
done.
got you. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's a good point. Okay, okay. That's a good
It's
point.
done.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Got you. So I guess
Oh man.
so. Tell us
So
about
I
your
don't
latest
know.
one.
Like I'm trying to think of like
Tell us about the last one. Let's talk about the last one.
um. So the last one I did, it was a two-bedroom, one bath, and we added on for the kitchen. We added on to, and it ended up being a three-bedroom, three bath, and then I also converted the garage into an ADU.
Got you. For our listeners, can you talk about what an ADU is? Like those who may
Oh,
perhaps
sure.
not have
So,
heard that before.
an ADU stands for an accessory dwelling unit. It's basically like a granny flat, a mother-in-law unit, basically a second unit on your property that people can use. It could be a garage conversion, so someone may have like a two-car garage that they convert into an actual, livable unit. Or you can maybe split your house up. Maybe you have three bedrooms, two baths, and you section off one bedroom, one bath to like rent off. An ADU is basically a way of getting a second unit on your property. And in cities like here in LA and other cities, especially on the West Coast, where we have housing problems, a housing shortage, that was our governors, mayors, whoever way of addressing and hoping to help the housing shortage that we're experiencing.
Got you. And what kind of work did this particular property need?
Oh, this last property needed everything. We did everything. I did a new roof. I did all new electrical, new panel, all new plumbing, supply lines, all new drain lines, new flooring. Like it was damn near a new property, except for yeah, it was pretty much new.
Wow. So I guess what was the purchase price on that? Of like roughly the rehab and then also the sale price.
Purchase price was about 385. Rehab, I think it was like about 215. I would say between like realtors commissions, financing costs and stuff like that, it was about 120ish, and it sold for 915. We listed it for 849, and we got multiple offers. We even got multiple all cash offers at our list price of 849, and we ended up closing with the buyer at 915.
Welcome to Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, that's amazing. That sounds like a beast of a project. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. So you probably all in like 600 or so. I don't even know.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, the listeners should go back and calculate
Yeah.
it. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Wow, that's amazing. So from basic lipstick jobs, for lack of a better word, to basically making a new house.
Right. Now that house had a whole lot of trials and tribulations.
Yeah. Tell us
I
about
mean,
some
not
of
just
them.
in terms of like the scope of work, like that one. I had like for real squatters, like squatters that they would come in and like live in the property and live in the garage. I had to get them kicked out. Like that was a whole thing.
How do you remove? So I guess in the city of Los Angeles, what's that process like to remove squatters? What are their rights?
Well, I'll tell you what happened in this scenario. I don't know about,
Hmm.
basically like one day I saw her, it was her and her boyfriend, and she had like a hammer in her hand. No, she had a knife in her hand. I picked up a hammer. We had a discussion. Um,
Wait,
and
she
then
came
like
at you with a knife, or
yeah, like she was like, cause she had uh trapped herself inside the garage.
goodness? Uh-huh.
And like they had, it was honestly, it was kind of cute what they did. You could tell like this was the kitchen, this was the closet, cause she had like she had like her microwave, and she had like her clothes hanging right here, and she had her shoes right here. It was kind of cute, but yeah, she had like locked herself in the garage and like refused to come out. And so like I was banging on the door, and she like had a knife and I had a hammer, and like we had our discussion. And so like she left, but then like she came back, and then she came back with like a friend, and it was just crazy to like one day I had drove by the property in the evening, and I knew that they were there. And so I was like, you know what, if I call LAPD at like 6, they're probably not gonna come. So I was like, let me drive by again at 3 in the morning and then call LAPD. So they came, and they got arrested, and yeah, I had to go to court and testify about them being in the house and stuff like that. So
Wow, wow. This business is not for the faint of heart, ladies and
no,
gentlemen.
it's not for the faint of heart. And I mean, like, I
Yeah,
don't want to scare people because I don't want them to make them think that, like, that's like a something I have to deal with all the time. Like, part of that was my fault because the property had set vacant for a little while because I had one contractor that I was working with, and I didn't properly vet him, and I ended up giving him more money than I should have in terms of the work that he completed. And so I had to let him go, and I was trying to like find another contractor. And so the property had set for a little while. So, people roaming the neighborhood at night were like, oh, vacant house, I could squat here. So I don't want to scare people and make them think like that's a normal situation, but
yeah, got you.
that was something that I learned. Like, you have to make sure your properties are moving along. Otherwise, you're just going to deal with more, nonsense.
Definitely. Would you say you try to be so at your flips? Would you say you try to be there as much as possible, just making sure stuff is moving along?
I would say I try to come at least like 2 times a week because I figure if you start coming every day, it looks like nothing is getting done.
Mm.
So I try to come like, 2 times a week just so I could see something is changing.
Yeah,
And I don't come on the same day. I try to switch it out. I don't want people to, get comfortable like, oh, the owner's coming Tuesday at 3. Let's look busy. No, I pop in and pop out when I please.
definitely, definitely. How many flips do you think you've done? Like roughly. I mean, obviously, I'm sure it's
I
probably.
don't know. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not one of these people who, because I mean, sometimes you talk to people and they have these large flip operations, and they're like, oh, I do 100 flips a year and yada yada. Like that's not me. I never got into real estate because I never wanted to have, this large operation. So I'm not saying that that's maybe in the future. I don't know. That's just not what I want to do. So I mean, I do like enough. Like I would say like 3 or 4 a year, enough to pay the bills and not go hungry.
Yeah. Hey, can't be mad at that.
Right. So I mean, like, I think that's the beauty of real estate. Like, it offers you that freedom. Like, I could do, a few deals a year and be cool, or I could build this big operation and have all these employees and yada yada yada, and say like I do 100 deals a year. Like, if that makes you feel good, that makes you feel good. But
Yeah.
that's just not that's just not me. So I mean, that's the path that I chose. Maybe one day, I don't know, I might wake up and be developing 100 units on Crenshaw. I don't know, but
Yeah,
that's what I like about it. Like I have the freedom to design my real estate business how I want to design it.
100%, 100%. So, speaking of like the future, what do you see for yourself in the future? Like, what are some goals you have? Do you plan to just continue flipping? Do you want to do some buy and hold or development? Like, what are some things you want to do in the future?
I mean, continuing on that ladder, I guess my next sort of like goal is to do something like 100% new construction. So maybe like tearing down a small house that's on a lot that's zoned for multifamily and building like a duplex or triplex or something like that. So doing something that's 100% new construction, I would say that's one of my goals. Um, I forgot. I was about to say
It's
something.
all
I
right.
totally
It'll
forgot.
come back.
What was the
Definitely.
question again?
Just what you want to do in the future. What are some of your things you're thinking about?
Oh yeah, so I want to do something that's completely 100% new construction, and then obviously I want to get into rentals. So I mean the point of flipping is cool, wholesaling is cool, but at the end of the day, it's a glorified job, right? So I'm still exchanging hours for dollars. So I want to transition into some more passive investment. So everybody keeps saying the market's going to crash. They've been saying that we've been going up, the market's going to crash, and I'm just waiting for it to fall down, but I don't know. So so I mean, I would say those are my two goals: is doing something 100% new construction, and then doing something where I'll keep long term.
Got you. Makes sense. Yeah, it seems like stuff is popping up all over LA. Everywhere you drive, it's like new developments, and I read Urbanized LA from time to time, and it's
Hmm.
just like every, you know what I mean? Like I probably look at it, let's say monthly, and it's always
Yeah.
something new that's popping up.
Yeah, I follow them on their Instagram account, and I mean from LA to North Hollywood to Koreatown to all over. There's just something. There's some new development going on. So I remember somebody once told me like the amount of cranes that you've seen in the air is usually a good indication of how strong the real estate market is. So
Definitely. So I guess as a native of LA, what are your thoughts on how things have developed, especially as a late, let's say like, last 5, 10 years or so? I would imagine it's very different from the city you grew up in many ways. So just personally as a native, what are your thoughts on everything from your perspective?
um like I kind of mentioned earlier, like we've got all these different little neighborhoods now. So I mean that's different. Um, I don't know. Like I feel like I don't know how to say this without
Go ahead and say, go ahead and say
gentrification
it. It's all
people
right.
coming after me. I just feel
Go
like
go ahead and say
overall,
it. Go ahead and
I
say
feel
it.
like overall we're experiencing such a housing shortage, like to where that's why people are starting to get priced out of certain neighborhoods and stuff like that. It's just we've just have a housing shortage. Like we have a housing shortage in low income housing. And like it's gonna sound funny, but even like sometimes in the higher neighborhoods, they might have a housing shortage too, or maybe they're overpriced. I think sometimes, people who wanted to be in a certain area are now having to move, further east and south than they wanted to. So I think that's definitely, pushing certain people out, which is unfortunate. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, like I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, like it's an opportunity. Whether you look at the opportunity and stay on the sidelines, or you either look in the opportunity and participate. Like you either participate or you complain. Like you can't do both. So that's how I look at it. Like at the end of the day, like I don't know. That's just my interpretation of it. It's an opportunity, whether it's good, bad, however you want to look at it. It's an opportunity, and either participate or stay on the sidelines.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I think a lot of people waste time talking about how they hate the way things are, or they hate um, how people getting pushed out or different things. But it's like at the end of the day, the solution is ownership. If you can't afford to own, invest with someone who can. I think if we focus on just getting one step closer to owning something, even if you just own one house and that's it, you're sheltered from some of these problems. And, you know, if you're on the other side, you're kind of at the mercy of what happens, you know, and obviously there's a lot more to it, but I think a lot could change if we collectively changed our minds and our thoughts on how we feel about how things are and focus more on, all right, what is literally one step that I could take to make sure maybe further down the line I don't have to be negatively impacted by what's happening around me, because change is inevitable.
Right.
It's gonna
Right.
happen.
Right.
It's happening all over this country. I don't know how it's gonna. I don't know what this. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna stop. But black people just got to figure out a way to get in, whatever that means to you, or just focus on getting yourself in a position, or if even if you feel like it's over for you, how can you help somebody behind you? How can you help your kid, or how can you help your nieces, your nephews, your grandkids? You know, like maybe you feel like your time is over, but what can you do to help somebody else?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like how I look at it as well. So I mean, I would rather, like you said, change is inevitable. Prices going up are inevitable. Whatever name you want to call it, it's inevitable. I'm just gonna make sure, like, okay, like, make sure that when this house is rehab, make sure that profit goes into my bank account, not someone else's. Like, at least, like, I rationalize it, like, at least, I'm in my community, at least I'm spending money in the community and stuff like that. Sometimes you have people who come from, outside the community, make their money and then go somewhere else. So I mean, I'm like, look, if this is the situation, if this is what it is, let me participate. And to me, that's my way of, recycling those dollars. Like, hey, I'm making my money, but I'm also keeping my money in the community. So
100% for sure,
I don't
for
know
sure.
if everybody has that mindset, but that's the mindset that I have.
And you have a right to it. So what's it been like for you as a woman in this business? A lot of um, sometimes women feel hesitant, or they feel like it, I would assume it's a different experience. We've had people who try to like take advantage of women who are in this business. But I personally believe, I mean, we've had a number of women on the show, including yourself, who are killing it, and I think it serves as a great inspiration to women everywhere. Obviously, this is like a male dominated space, so I would just love to hear more about your experience as a woman in this business.
Um, I think it's been I think I've had more of a hurdle of being black and younger than I have being a woman,
Got it.
if that makes sense.
Makes
So,
sense.
and especially sometimes I feel like, or I hate to say this, but I feel more discriminated against, or I feel like I have to prove myself more to people who look like me.
Wow.
Um, I mean, just in different aspects. I mean, like, for example, I'll call someone and I'll be like, oh, buy houses, we could pay. Well, how do you buy houses and blah, 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 stuff like that. Or people don't really believe, like, oh, you flip houses. Well, who's really flipping them? Like, sometimes I feel like um that I have more of a hurdle than actually being a woman.
Got
But
you.
I mean, I think the woman thing, I think it comes out more when I'm dealing with contractor. I think being a woman is an advantage when I'm dealing directly with sellers, because I feel, just as women, it's our nature to be a little bit more empathetic. It's our nature to be, listeners and nurturers. So I think, sometimes being a woman, it helps me to build rapport faster with a seller. But I think sometimes on the construction side, you have your contractors who are generally are male. They might want to try to take advantage of you. I mean, that's kind of like with anything. You guys are always going to try to push the button and see how far you could go. But I mean, I think just, over time, just having the experience and being able to communicate in a way to where they know I'm not just some, oh, hey, I want to flip the house. Like, they know I'm serious. They know this is business. Like, so I mean, just putting things in place so they know, like, hey, this is a serious business relationship. Although her body parts may not be like mine, like, you need to talk to her in a respectable, business sort of manner. So I think that sort of helps me, like the experience that I have, and being able to kind of like communicate, it helps me to sort of overcome that hurdle.
Got it. Got it. I hear you. I hear you. And are you kind of, is it kind of like a solo, like, do you kind of run everything? Do you work with anybody else on your team?
I mean, like, I call my team, like I have a VA who calls, and then I have my private lenders that I work with. But I mean, aside from that, I don't have any like employees, and that's by choice.
Definitely. 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 So what advice would you give to someone who is interested in what you're doing? So, perhaps they're interested in wholesaling, flipping, but they're afraid, they're not sure where to start. What would you say to that person?
Um, I would say, like, you need to have a conversation. I think first of all, like, I see a lot of people are prolonging getting into flipping because they haven't picked a strategy. Number one, so they haven't decided if they want to do wholesaling, if they want to do flipping, if they want to do BRR, if they want to do house hacking. Like, they're just so, oh, I'm just going to go with a deal. Like, no, you need to know what you're looking for. Like, I could sit up here and say, you know, you could say I want a girlfriend or I want to be married, but you have to know what qualities you want in that person. So I think first of all, you need to have a conversation with yourself and identify, like, what are my strengths? Do I have more time? Do I have more money? And, stick to the strategy that is going to be best for you. Do I want to invest, locally or out of state? Like, have that conversation. And then I would say being consistent. I feel a lot of people jump all over the place. They jump here, and one day you talk to them, they're like, oh, I'm analyzing deals in Ohio, and 2 weeks later, oh, I'm looking at this gas station in Alabama. Like, what? So I
That's
think being
funny.
consistent,
Yeah,
and like I said, you have to get out of trying to be that pro perfectionist thing. That perfectionist is just a comfort blanket. You have to get over not being perfect. You have to get over of not knowing steps 1 through 30. As long as you know, like, steps 1 and 2, like, you're good. Then when you get to step 2, figure out 3 and 4, and then figure out 5 and 6. I think so many people want to know every little step, and it's like real estate is fluid. Like, there's never going to be any transaction that is exactly the same. There is no way. There's too many permutations and combinations of possibilities that you're never going to know exactly what to do. But just be confident in knowing that there's someone out there who knows how to figure the problem out, or who knows how to navigate whatever you're trying to accomplish. So that's what I would say to those people who are, just getting started, trying to find their way.
definitely. Definitely. And do you offer like courses or coaching or anything for anybody who wants to learn from you?
Yeah, so I have my wholesale coaching program. It's a on demand, self-paced coaching program, but it also has an element of accountability. We have a Facebook group, and then we meet weekly on Sunday evenings to answer any questions that you may have. So I know a lot of times people purchase courses, and it's like you get the course, but there's no one to kind of like talk to. So I really wanted to create a coaching program where you still have that element of, interaction with the actual human being, because, as you're learning, questions come up. So yeah, so I have my coaching program, and then I'm also coming out with another program on how to work with contractors and flipping and stuff like that. So be
Nice.
on the lookout for that. I've been working on that because I get a lot of people like, well, Crystal, how do you flip? I want to flip, but I'm scared a contractor's going to rip me off. I'm scared, how do I find a contractor? I'm scared I'm going to over rehab. So I'm working on a course that's sort of taking my experience working with contractors and flipping and sort of putting that together so people can feel comfortable actually doing a flip.
Definitely, definitely have all that in the show notes. And so where can people find you if they want to keep in touch with you, if they want to just follow what you have going on, and also like purchase your
Sure.
courses too?
Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram at SoCal Flip Gal. Oh, I kind of dipped my toe in the water of TikTok.
I don't understand TikTok. How do you use it? I don't get it.
It's like, to me, it's like a platform to be silly. Like, that's how I interpret it. It's like 15 to 20 seconds of silliness. Is how I
Wow.
interpret it.
Well, feel free to drop your TikTok. I'm sure you got plenty of people on
It's
that.
all TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. It's all at SoCal Flip Gal, at SoCal Flip Gal. So exactly how it sounds, SoCalFlipGal. So my Instagram and my Facebook is for my more serious content. TikTok is just, I'm bored, let me do something silly. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in, becoming a part of one of my coaching students, feel free to reach out to me on those social media platforms, or you can send me an email. My email is info@socalflipgal.com, info@socalflipgal.com. And depending on when you're watching this, I usually host a weekly masterclass on Sunday evenings, where I talk about a little bit more detail about, my journey, how I got started, the strategies that I used to got started, and kind of like the 10 steps to wholesaling. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me on social media, Facebook and Instagram at SoCalFlipGal, or you can email me at info@socalflipgal.com.
Definitely, definitely. All of that, definitely make sure we have all that in the show notes. But wow, this has been really great, Crystal. I really enjoyed this interview. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind is just that moment you had when your back was against the wall, you lost your job, and you just had to figure out what was next. And you just had to get
Right,
something done.
right,
Took 8 months to close your first wholesale deal. You did some more wholesale deals. You saved some capital up, started doing flips. And so, I just think it's a great testament to just courage, just faith, just hunger to just make something happen. And really, many of us have been in situations where our back was against the wall, but it's like, do you fold or do you just figure out how to get something done? And, I think that difference that makes a big difference. Like the
right.
what you decide to do during that moment and what you
I
decided to
mean,
do.
you have to want it bad enough. Like, a lot
Mhm.
of people just, they're in love with real estate, but I don't think they really truly want it like bad enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, because to me, it's like the time is gonna pass. Either if you do nothing or you don't do anything. Like, the time is gonna pass. Like, what? Like, seriously? Like, let's just say you tried it for 6 months. Okay, 6 months out of your 80 something years of living, like.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Well, Crystal, I really appreciate it. I can't wait to put this out. I'm sure our listeners will get a whole lot from it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you for having me on your podcast. And then maybe, in the future we could do this again.
Definitely. Definitely. Love to have an update at some point in the future. Hope probably talking about your 100 unit building you're building.
You'll have a TV show by then.
Oh, I received that. You could be on the show. You could be on the show, and we're local, you know, so we can have a
Right,
episode
right,
with all the local guests or something.
right, exactly.
Definitely, definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. I look forward to hearing from you all soon.